things in America: great wealth, philanthropy, and public service. David Rockefeller, former chairman of the Chase Manhattan Bank, probably knows as many international leaders and important established figures as anyone. He joins us now to share his thoughts about the world and about the United States and about this city that he loves. Welcome.
Thank you very much, John.
It's a pleasure to have you here. Let me read something to you. I was struck by this. You say what New York represents not just our destiny, but the country's destiny. It remains this country's center of creativity in nearly every field: painting, music, dance, theater, publishing, advertising, communications, and from time to time, we're lucky, even sports. Not so lucky this year, but with the Knicks, maybe so. It has few, if any, rivals in the fields of higher education, medicine, and scientific research. Yet New York is also a place of squalor and illness and illiteracy. Almost a quarter of New York residents and 40% of New York children live in poverty. And you go on to say the city's infant mortality rate is over 35% higher than the national average. Given these sounds, as you say, you're still hopeful about the future, in part because you have faith in the enduring resilience and creativity of New Yorkers. Tell me what you think our future is and what you think the imperative is for this city to maintain its place in this country and as a shining light in the world.
Well, I still believe all of the things that you quoted me as having said. It is a great city, and it, I believe, always will be. Does have many problems. I think the only hope for New York, as in the case of most of the problems that we face even in the country and the world, is that the public sector and the private sector have got to work together more effectively than they have in the past. And I think that there have been some encouraging things that have happened in the city. I was involved after I left the bank in establishing a thing called the New York City Partnership, which tried to bring together all the elements of the private sector in the city, all the boroughs and all the ethnic groups, as well as big and small business, to see how it can work effectively in working with government. And we did a number of things in the field of housing, in the field of employment, which have been quite effective. Now, not all of that has been accomplished. In fact, there's a long way to go, but I believe that that is the answer.
Are the resources there from that relationship, though? I mean, where do we find the financial resources to do what is necessary to deal with the problems you talk about: squalor and illness and illiteracy, and the 40% of New York children that live in poverty? What do we have to say to the private sector, and what do we have to say to the citizens of New York?
Well, I think that there has to be a cutting down in the expense of government. One of the problems of New York is that we spend more per capita through government than any other city in the country. Part of this is because we have a welfare system that is a very generous one, but encourages people to come in who need help.
From other places in the country where their system is not as generous.
In other countries. Right. And that is clearly a problem. But I think that we also have a government which spends more than it needs to. I think it plays a larger role in a number of aspects of the city's life than it needs to.
Like what?
Well, for example, take sanitation. I have a feeling that a lot could be done in reducing the cost of sanitation. One of the problems is the labor union negotiations, which have resulted in sanitation workers spending only about 4 hours a day. I think there's got to be a change in that. I think it's quite possible that a lot of the work in the sanitation field could be done by the private sector.
Do you believe municipal unions have too much power and too much of a lock on the city?
I think that they have a lot of power, and of course they have a lot of power in the present administration in that they played an important role in putting Mayor Dinkins in. I think he's in many ways certainly a very fine man, and I think he is a very responsible person, but I think that he has not been able to control the influence of labor in terms of dealing with these very serious problems that have to be dealt with.
What do you say to labor, though? I mean, if you were a political figure...
It's not easy. But
how do you ask somebody to give up power?
Well, I tell you, during the crisis of the 1970s, when New York City, in effect, went broke and couldn't sell its obligations, labor and the private sector were calling each other names and saying that each was responsible, that the other was responsible. But then we came to realize that government and labor and business each had a deep interest in the city, and we each made compromises. I think more of that has to be done today. I think there has to be more privatization, and I think it's possible to do.
And that's a test for leadership.
It's a test for leadership on all sides.
And you need to see more in terms of corporate social responsibility.
No question about that. And I think there isn't enough of that today.
And what do your business friends say when you ask them to do more? They say, I've got stockholders that I'm accountable to. They say, I've got a board of directors I'm accountable to. And these are tough times.
That's true. On the other hand, I think the New York City Partnership has demonstrated that when they see an opportunity and see an obligation and a need, and you call on them, most of them will participate. And I think there has to be more leadership in that.
And connecting how that it is in their future and it is in their interest to invest in the city, because unless they do, then they lose, because they're talking about schools and they're talking about things that benefit them.
That's right. But I think we have seen, for example, Barry Sullivan was recently made the deputy mayor for development.
Some say at your suggestion, too.
Well, he was an old friend and colleague, and I think I did have a little to say in persuading him to come. But he, I think, has the kind of sense of what needs to be done. He's worked well with the mayor. He's brought the mayor closer together with business. The mayor is now having regular meetings every other week with 6 corporate executives discussing the problems of the city with them. I think the mayor is coming to understand business much better than he did, and I think business is coming to have a greater sense of confidence in him. So I think this is going to work out.
Let me shift you to the national attention first. Bill Clinton is calling, the new President-elect Clinton is calling a lot of business leaders and others to Little Rock for a council, a kind of to listen and hear what they say. I don't know if you're invited. I don't know whether you're going or not. But if you were going, what would you say to the new president about what he has to do with respect to the nation's economy?
Well, in the first place, I think it's just a wonderful thing that he has done what he has done. I think that the very fact that as an early act in his administration, he has indicated he wants to bring in and get the advice of business is very encouraging. One of the things that is most important in bringing about a stronger recovery in our economy is to create confidence. And confidence is something that is very fragile, is generated both by government and by the private sector, understanding one another and working together. Once again, the question of partnership. I think that the business community, if it is given a chance, can be very helpful to the president. And I think they will be.
And it helps create the confidence that they will have by his willingness to invite them down there and listen to them. And in fact, he shows some receptivity and some engagement of a dialogue.
I think that's exactly right. And I think that one of the things they're very likely to say is that one of the problems in recent years is that our rate of savings has gone far too low, much lower than any other country in the world. We haven't spent enough on research and development. We haven't spent enough in investment in plant and equipment. But those things will only happen if tax policies are the wise ones, and if business feels hopeful for the future. And I think if they talk with the president, they may work those problems out.
And what signal should he send to the business community, other than the fact that he's listening?
I think that he is interested in seeing business given a fair deal, that he is not looking for a punitive solution, that on the other hand, he is looking for ways in which to stimulate business investment. And some of the things he said has certainly have been in that direction.
Like an investment tax credit, something akin to what John Kennedy did when he took power.
Would certainly be one.
Should he lower the capital gains tax? Or you recommend the lowering of the capital gains?
A lowering of the capital gains tax would also be helpful. I think it's probable that if he does that, there may be other forms of taxation that he may have to impose.
Like?
I happen to believe that an increase in the gasoline tax at the tank is one of the most efficient ways of accomplishing several things at the same time.
Conservation is one. Revenue is another.
Revenue is another. Imports, reducing imports is a third.
Mm-hmm.
And it's efficient to produce. Now, it's not a popular thing, and it hurts some people more than others. It may well be that in areas of the country where people depend on driving, that there'll have to be some special treatment for them. But this is certainly one type of tax that I think would be efficient.
He's been opposed to it. I mean, Felix Roden is recommending it in some testimony he's made. Ross Perot recommended it as well. But Bill Clinton so far has been resistant to it.
Well, I hope perhaps he might change his mind.
Let me move now to the United States' place in the world. You traveled to Japan, and you may have recently come, Jenna.
Yes, I was there about 3 weeks ago.
What's their opinion of us, and how is it changing?
Well, at the moment, I think they've got lots of problems of their own, both in terms of the single political party that has run Japan since the end of the war, which is beginning to marred by scandal and is less effective than it was, and they're seeking a way out of that. They also have serious economic problems, particularly in the real estate field, as we do here. And I think that they're very worried about their own position. I think they're probably a good deal less cocky about their strengths relative to ours at the moment than they were even a couple of years ago. So I personally feel that there is no reason why we can't work out an effective partnership relationship with Japan.
Do you want to see them, and do you recommend to them that they increase their own role in the world in terms of security? And that they take, for example, on issues like the Persian Gulf, when that war came up, that they play a more active role in exercising their power?
I think they're going to have to. Obviously, the delicate issue is whether we and they should change the agreement that was made after World War II, that they would not build an army and would not play the kind of role that they did in the past. I think it would be a mistake to see them build up another military establishment. On the other hand, I think there are many ways in which they can play a bigger role in the world, and I think they should.
What do they fear the most? When they look around, what do they fear? Do they worry about the United States pulling back on its role as the world's policeman?
I think they would be very worried about that. I think that they're worried about their own ability to be an effective economic leader in the world, because there are still many countries, even and perhaps most particularly in Asia, that are not comfortable having them play too big a role, which are very eager to see the United States continue to play a role.
Countries like China or countries like...
Well, China would be one, but all of the like Indonesia and the Philippines and Korea, certainly, very much Korea, also Malaysia and Thailand. All of these countries had a very bad experience with Japan during the war, and they don't want to see Japan be the dominant force in the world. Therefore, I think it is all of the countries, including Japan, really want to see the United States continue to play a significant role in Asia. I think by the same token, so do the Europeans. Many of them want to see us play a role in Europe. We can't escape, in my judgment, being a major force in the world. And one of the things that is of concern to me is that the Clinton administration, which understandably and properly is focusing on domestic issues, may pay so much attention that they will not pay enough to our responsibilities overseas.
But when I talk to those that I happen to run into at different meetings in New York, European leaders, they also seem to be very concerned that is a source of our strength internationally is getting our economic house in order, and that is in fact an important aspect of our ability to play an international role.
No question, that's true. They feel so, and I think so too.
Yeah. How do you feel? What should we learn from the experience, the economic experience of Japan and Germany?
Well, I think that they have been doing in the post-war period much that we did in the pre-World War I period. They worked harder, longer hours, and they produced more efficiently. They spent less and they saved more.
And saving is a crucial thing.
And saving, I still feel, is crucial. Our savings rate got down to 3%, whereas Japan has been up around 25%, and China even higher.
You're writing your memoirs now.
I am.
Is it difficult to be candid? Is it difficult to sit down and say...
Well, so far I've been talking into a tape and trying to put down what was going on in the past, and I haven't gotten very much down on paper. I hope it can be candid, and because I think people aren't going to be interested if they feel it's just fluff. But I think it has to be both candid and objective and hopefully fair, and it shouldn't be nasty either.
Yeah. Is anything you do dramatically different? I mean, you have had this rather remarkable life in which you've had influence. You've been on the president of the Council of Foreign Relations. You have created the Trilateral Commission. So many things, the Museums of American Indians, the Rockefeller University, the Museum of Modern Art, the New York City Partnership, we mentioned so many things. Anything you do dramatically different? Or
well, by spending less time in relation to banking things, in fact, I spend very little in relation to the Chase, where I spent 35 years, it's given me more time to do a lot of other things that I was interested in, so that today I am spending more time on, for example, the Museum of Modern Art than I did. Spent a good part of today in relation to the National Museum of the Indian, the American Indian, and
his new home at the Customs House.
His new home at the Customs House, and that's been a fascinating experience. It's something that I had been interested in for some time, and suddenly learned about 7 or 8 years ago through Barbara Conable, whom I happened to see when we were both making speeches in Louisiana.
He was, I guess, then head of the World Bank.
No, this was before
Congress.
He was head of
Congress.
It was in between,
right.
And he was then chairman of the museum, and he told me that they were having a very difficult time, and that the only solution was to go to the Customs House. But he said the only person that could do that was the President of the United States.
And if correct me, you saw the President and mentioned it to him, and he did something about it.
That's right. And as a result, we opened today a unit of the Customs House of the American Museum of the American Indian in the Customs House. A very exciting event. Well, this is the kind of thing I've been able to do, which has been fun, and I've had more time to do than I did when I was working for the bank.
Well, it's a pleasure to have you here. I hope we can do this again and talk about more of some of these important issues.
Thank you, Charlie.
Thank you very much for coming. Me too.